Welcome one and all to another episode here at the Damage Report with me, John Iadarola, and we're joined by a very special guest once again, David Shuster. David, how's it going?
Hello, John. Good to be with you and the Dragon Squad. We got a lot of fun stuff coming up today.
Great to have you here. The squad loves to have some rebels join us because, of course, David's of Rebel HQ doing amazingly over there. What are some of the topics you've covered recently over at the HQ?
I just put together a 7-minute video on Lauren Boebert. I was, for many years I thought that Louis Gohmert was the stupidest member of Congress, but after going through all the tapes and all the reels, Lauren Boebert by far is the dumbest and the most ignorant, and we explain in 7 minutes in today's video, so everybody should check it out.
That is a fascinating question. Obviously, we have way more experience with Louis Gohmert, and Louis Gohmert has said some really dumb stuff. But Lauren, it's definitely a different flavor of stupid. Louis Gohmert is more of that sort of folksy, I kind of get on some level that I'm dumb. Right. Whereas Lauren Boebert's very like sassy, I totally am not aware that I'm coming up short here. So I don't know, maybe we could do a poll on Twitch.
Well, what did it for me was when Lauren Boebert said just a couple days ago to Mike Huckabee, she compared herself to Jesus Christ about whether or not she should tone it down. She says, well, Jesus didn't tone it down. I'm thinking, well, if you're really gonna compare yourself to Jesus, maybe there's some other things about Jesus that she ought to know. So anyway, it's a fun video.
Yeah, no, that's the only one, is that he didn't tone it down. He's basically the Joe Rogan of his time. He was just having open, fun conversations. She also said on Twitter that the Constitution never evolves, which, anyway. I do think though, David, look, I'm obviously a big fan of yours, but I will not stand for this Marjorie Greene erasure. If we're gonna do this poll, you need to be fair.
Well, it's one of these things where one of them takes the lead for a couple days and then the other one says something or tweets something and then takes the lead back. So at least for now, until Marjorie Taylor Greene opens her mouth again or tweets something, for now, Lauren Boebert is the dumbest member of Congress, but that may not last.
That's true. And of course, we can't forget that Donald Trump has said a lot of really stupid stuff in his life as well. There's a lot of competition on that. But in any event, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
That goes out to you, David, of course, but also the audience, thank you for being here. We've got a lot that we're gonna be talking about through the course of the next 90 minutes. Not only the old crow claiming his nickname and attacking Donald Trump, what's coming from the Cuomo brothers. We've got some updates there, infiltration of the progressive movement, as well as you thought, John, it was already kind of weird how much you were talking about postal trucks and how passionate you got about it, but we've actually got maybe even worse information coming this time. So all of that is coming up, as well as we are regrettably limited to only 1 hour of David today. But that means there's still like 25, 30 minutes of the show. So we've got a special little treat planned for you, maybe a little guest, we'll see. Okay, Brooke is asking about the poll on Twitch. I would like it if you were paying attention. So thank you. I don't know if she was on or if she's, because there's a lot of chat going on. Anyway, we will see. Maybe people in the chat can fill her in. But with all that said, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and sharing the stream, that would be great. And David, with that said, would you like to jump into some news?
You know what? I actually don't have it right in front of me. For some reason, I thought you were gonna lead.
Okay, I will, I guess. Okay. With that said, I'll leave.
Well, let's talk. I tell you what, I'll suggest that. Let's talk about Mitch McConnell.
Okay. No, I'm actually ready to go with that. I think that's perfectly in our wheelhouse. So with that, let's jump into this.
Okay.
Well, let me give you my view of what happened January the 6th. And we're here. We saw what happened. It was a violent insurrection for the purpose of trying to prevent the peaceful transfer of power after a legitimately certified election from one administration to the next. That's what it was. With regard to the suggestion that the RNC should be in the business of picking and choosing Republicans who ought to be supported, traditionally the view of the national party committees is that we support all members of our party, regardless of their positions on some issues.
Do you have confidence in her, Ronna McDaniel, as chairwoman of the committee?
I do, but the issue is whether or not the RNC should be sort of singling out members of our party who may have different views from the majority. That's not the job of the RNC.
Okay, so that is Mitch McConnell, leader of the Republicans in the Senate, responding to a couple of different things that have been going on in the GOP recently. Obviously, the censure of people like Representative Kinzinger and Cheney, but also the RNC coming out with that statement that like, nah, January 6th was great, totally legitimate, it was the best. So he disagrees with those. So, David, how much credit do you give Mitch McConnell for these positions?
I don't think this is exactly a profile in courage, and it's the same thing that I think we saw with Mike Pence, who's one of the more conservatives that are out there. The polling in the Republican Party has shifted dramatically over the last 6 months. Maybe it's because of the January 6th committee, all the revelations that have come out, all the revelations that are coming, but there's blood in the water surrounding Donald Trump. And if you go back to say October 2020, it was something like 55% of the Republicans identified first with Donald Trump and the party second. And it was like 35% identified first as Republicans. That's now flipped. Now it's only about 35% that identify first as with Donald Trump. 55% identify first with the Republican Party. Republican leaders see this. They see Donald Trump still having a very committed base, but a base that is getting smaller. And for Mitch McConnell, for Mike Pence who wants to run for president, not having Donald Trump at the top of the party would be a godsend for them. And they finally see that they've got some political cover because of how people feel about Donald Trump to go ahead and distance themselves from the president. So I don't think that's certainly a profile in courage at all. Mitch McConnell is still going to hedge his bets, but he's certainly seeming more comfortable to distance himself from Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the poll, the change in the polls that you referenced there, I'd seen that too, and it's definitely interesting. I don't think it got as much recognition as I think it deserved, but it is coming at the end of a year which represented the least Donald Trump we've experienced for about half a decade. Do you think that number could just as easily reverse itself once we get towards presidential campaign season and Donald Trump is suddenly popping up every single day?
You know what? I don't think so, for the simple reason that I have a feeling that the January 6th committee is going to dominate more of the headlines than Donald Trump. Incredibly engaging and sort of fun to watch, fun being the strange word, in terms of his rallies. And he could just sort of control the media and everybody give him a lot of attention. Now the media is not giving him so much attention, but they are giving a lot of attention to what the January 6th committee is doing. And the committee is likely going to have subpoenas for Ivanka Trump, for Sean Hannity. There's all sorts of indications now that Donald Trump was far more involved in organizing and planning and encouraging people to storm the Capitol. And as that starts to come out, as that narrative starts to be sort of occupy the media space, I think a lot of Republicans, they want to just move on from January 6th, whether they feel it was justified or not. They don't want to talk about it. And the more that it is talked about and Donald Trump is associated with it, I think that causes Donald Trump's numbers to sort of further go down. Again, it doesn't eliminate Donald Trump, but I think it provides some cover for a lot of Republicans.
Yeah, and maybe that's as simple as it is, that Mitch McConnell feels a little bit freed up to identify it for what it actually is. It was a violent insurrection. I know I forget, it was one of the idiots on the right was coming out today, was like, no, you can't call it that because it had no chance of succeeding. Okay, well, we're not responsible for the fact that they're incompetent and that their eyes are bigger than their stomachs. Like, okay, you failed. You still wanted to do it. Attempted murder is still bad. I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that's basically how it works.
Well, Mitch McConnell also sees that he doesn't want Senate Republicans to get murdered politically. And he's looking at, well, he might be able to pick up enough seats to be able to become the Senate Majority Leader again. But the polling also suggested, to the extent that the political world is focused on Donald Trump and not focused on the Democrats. Republicans want voters to think only about Joe Biden, think only about inflation, think about the things that Joe Biden has done wrong. Every time that Donald Trump enters the conversation, or look back at Donald Trump or January 6th enters the conversation, Republicans feel their possibility of taking control of both the House and the Senate starts to slip away. And that's another reason, Mitch McConnell's also got some moderate Republicans, who are more centrist, who are not exactly Trump supporters, who are also up for re-election. He's trying to protect them as well.
Yeah. Although I do want to add to, him being willing to identify that and saying, hey, let's not necessarily excommunicate our members, just because they agreed with my assessment of what January 6th was. And by the way, that's basically what they've done. The censure resolution he was referring to there says that the RNC shall immediately cease any and all support to Cheney and Kinzinger. Says that they had crossed a line. Okay, well, so he's saying don't do that. But to be fair, while Mitch McConnell does identify January 6th as a violent insurrection, as Sophie pointed out in our production doc, there are a couple of additional facts about Mitch McConnell that you should probably take into account. One is that he's totally fine with all of the Republicans running for office agreeing with the same lies that led to January 6th. He's not saying we need to do a better job of weeding them out, or we need to be more supportive of primary challenges to Josh Hawley or Ted Cruz. I mean, they supported the insurrection. So with that, he still supports Donald Trump. Like, they're arguing or whatever, but if Donald Trump runs in 2024 and he's the nominee, McConnell is gonna support him. That is just very clear. And despite the fact that he identifies January 6th as having been an insurrection, he has no interest whatsoever in it being investigated. He didn't want the commission that you were just talking about to actually exist. So you're saying it was a violent insurrection, but none of your other actions seem like they would naturally follow from what you've identified. You seem pretty cool with it, even if you might identify it as an insurrection.
Well, and that raises the $1 million question I'll pose to you, and that is, I mean, Mitch McConnell obviously wants to hedge his bets and protect himself just in case Donald Trump wins the nomination and wins the presidency again. Given the sort of war of words between Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell, do you think McConnell is hedging his bet successfully? Do you think that Donald Trump will forget about what he sees as Mitch McConnell crossing him right now, 6 months, a year in the future?
Look, it's an interesting question, but I think we should identify that, like, forgetting it doesn't function the same way for Trump as it does for other people. Like, first of all, I think he's gonna hate Mitch McConnell for the rest of his life, probably. But you say something nice about him, he loves you. You vote against him, he hates. Like, it flip-flops so quickly. Like, there's no relationship inertia that builds up. No, like, foundation. It's all, what was the last thing you did to me? Which is not how most people function. Most people, like, you're willing to cut them some slack based on your past relationship or vice versa. So look, I think he's going to hate Mitch McConnell. In this case, even if Mitch McConnell delivers for him in terms of legislation in some future presidency. But I'm also not entirely sure how much it matters from Mitch McConnell's point of view, unless it leads to Donald Trump supporting someone else who would become majority leader in a future Republican majority, which I haven't heard much talk about that. Do you think that that's a consequence that Mitch McConnell should be worrying about?
No, and Mitch McConnell's got a much better control in terms of the centrists have much more influence, of course, in the Senate than they do in the House. So I think Mitch McConnell doesn't fear that there's any sort of leadership challenge. John Cornyn, the Republican from Texas, is very loyal to him, not to Donald Trump. So I don't think McConnell sees that there are any Trumpsters, like a Senator Johnson or somebody who would have enough support to be able to challenge him. I think where McConnell may be a little concerned is he also needs control of the House in order for his agenda in the Senate to get through. And he recognizes that there are a number of Republican districts where it takes a more moderate Republican or a centrist sort of candidate to be successful. And he doesn't want to block them off. He doesn't want them to be primaried by the Trumpsters, who then make it a more difficult battle in order to win the seat come November.
Yeah. Well, that said, I want to jump into something ridiculous for just a few minutes. Let's talk about this. For some time now, for some reason that no one can identify, Donald Trump has christened Mitch McConnell as the broken down old crow, which is, I believe, the literal last animal you would think of when looking on Mitch McConnell's face. But anyway, that's what he calls him. And Mitch McConnell has finally responded to that, saying, "It's my favorite bourbon." That's what he said on Tuesday evening in an interview with the Washington Examiner. He said, "Aren't we using Old Crow as my moniker now? It was Henry Clay's favorite bourbon." Clay represented Kentucky in the House and the Senate in the early to mid 1800s. And it is indeed an old bourbon. It wasn't one that I'm familiar with. It is Old Crow bourbon, which my producers helpfully identify you can get for $22. So I don't know, maybe this is Mitch McConnell trying to appear like a man of the people with his relatively cheap bourbon. Anyway, it's just, you never know as a politician, David, what you will end up getting labeled by Donald Trump. If you ended up being called the old crow, would you consider that getting off lightly?
Well, if it came from Donald Trump, I would think it has nothing to do with bourbon. It may have something to do with some sort of cartoon character. I think of maybe like the old Elmer Fudd, and I think there was sort of a crow-like figure who had sort of a strange neck and sort of hunched over like Mitch McConnell. I think that's what Donald Trump is actually referring to. I don't think he knows that the first thing about bourbon. And if that's his reference, then I would think, okay, a childhood cartoon from the 1960s or 70s, that would seem to sort of fit. I would say, okay, that's just Donald Trump. He's been watching a lot of TV through his life, and that's all he knows. And he sees me or Mitch McConnell, whatever it is, looking like a crow. Okay, it's a little pathetic, but whatever.
It's funny because I watched those cartoons growing up. I have no idea of what crow that is, but it does make sense that for two reasons that might be the reference that Trump is making. One is that his references would come from 60 years ago, and two, that it would be a cartoon that he would be referencing there. But in any event, I just want to remind people of one thing. I did not launch into this so that we could just talk about like, oh, is he an old crow? Like, no, he's awful actually. Whether you identify him as a crow or a turtle or a shriveled up old human being, remember, he also liked being known as the Grim Reaper in a previous political era. So his thing there was, no, I am the person that is going to kill literally any effort by the government to help anyone who isn't a multi-millionaire. Doesn't matter what majority you get in the House or whatever, doesn't matter how any of these policies poll. It doesn't matter because we don't live in the government system that you might think that we do. I will kill it. And so he was labeled the Grim Reaper and he was apparently quite happy about that at that time, David.
And look, I mean, Mitch McConnell, he doesn't have a lot of years left. It wouldn't surprise me if he, if he can't become majority leader in 2022, I'm not so sure he lasts much beyond. I think he's up for reelection in 2026, 2028. I don't think he's going to run for reelection. So I think this is it for him. One more shot at being Senate Majority Leader again, hopefully for his sake. He's hoping that the Republicans can take the House and then he can sort of impose his will on the American people as he has with more corporate tax cuts, more allowing government to essentially shrink, allowing big business to sort of run wild with pollution and garbage and everything else. And who cares about working class people? That's essentially, oh, and by the way, if you can throw in another conservative Supreme Court justice, that's also good for Mitch McConnell. That's the vision that he has of America. And I think he wants one more shot of having the Senate and the House to be able to do it. Or at least to stymie what Joe Biden is doing and hoping that he can somehow get another lunatic Republican in 2024 so that he can wreak more havoc across the United States and help himself and his cronies. But I don't think Mitch McConnell's in it for much longer than a few more years.
Yeah, I think you might be right. And obviously from his point of view, I think he's accomplished a lot. He's made the government into even more of a mockery than it was. He's drained it of any of the money necessary to actually help working people, and he has gotten through multiple insane people on the Supreme Court. But I think you can always have more. You can always set your sights higher. I mean, putting Kavanaugh on, that was really reprehensible, and I'm sure he's quite proud of it. But I don't think he will rest until he can get someone on the Supreme Court who's accused of sexual assault, like while they're being considered for the Supreme Court, like mid-hearing. They should be accused of sexual assault. Then I think he could go to his grave peacefully.
Well, he identified something else that Mitch McConnell feels like he's got enormous political skills, and it would, I suppose, be an incredible political feather in his own cap. And he would say, "Look how good I am at politics that I can get somebody through in the midst of a sexual harassment accusations during the hearing." And he would probably love that.
Let's hope that we don't end up there. That would be a feather in his cap that he could provide, the old crow. Anyway. With that said, we're gonna take our first break. When we come back, he's not the only awful person. We're gonna give you updates on the Cuomo brothers. What have they been up to? What might they be doing in the near future? We'll have that for you after this. Okay, everybody, it looks like our poll is now complete. Thank you to our Twitch audience, the dumbest member of Congress. We asked you two choices, Louis Gohmert and Lauren Boebert, which rhyme, and I don't think that's a coincidence. Anyway, 86% of you chose Lauren Boebert, 14% Louis Gohmert. So that, David, I think is the way you would have it go.
Yeah, I mean, but I also feel like this is a younger generation that pays attention to Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene. You have to be of a certain age to remember the craziness of Louis Gohmert all the way back to the Clinton years. So
that's true.
So people who advocate for Louis Gohmert probably think, well, this isn't a fair fight right now because a lot of young people, I don't know.
That's funny. I actually am not familiar with what he was up to during the Clinton years. I just know like the stupidity during the Obama years, and that was enough for me. But anyway, thank you to everybody who voted. Okay, with that said, let's see what's going on out there. Non-Human Humanist has been a tier 3 member for 12 months over on YouTube and says, sending much love to the dragons and all other species, even to the most big-headed and conceited of all, humans. Stay safe, happy, and healthy, and mind the bad humans. Oh, we do, and thank you for being with us. Amy Rugala, tier 2 member for 14 months, says, I can't believe it's been 14 months already. You keep me sane, John. Much thanks to you and all. Thank you for being here. Okay, Nolan K says, which dragon here? Riddle me this. Should McConnell lose everything? A, yes. B, definitely. C, totally. I rigged it. Thanks for all you do. Now that's a poll we should get up on Twitch. Anyway, Musically Megs, this is one from yesterday, but I wanted to make sure that we got to it. It says, happy 90th birthday to John Williams, composer of Star Wars, Harry Potter, Jaws, Jurassic Park, Superman, E.T., and many more, the king of nerdy scores. It is ridiculous how many iconic scores that one person has been responsible for.
So prolific, even the theme from NBC News for so many years. I mean, it's
really
remarkable. Yeah, I mean,
I did not know that.
I just thought, if I ever had enough money, if I had my own news division, I could commission somebody to do a musical score for anything, it would be John Williams in a heartbeat. Even if it sounded like Star Wars or Raiders of the Lost Ark, I'd be awesome.
Well, I would say especially if it sounded like that. Like if we could get a new TDR intro from John Williams, we'd go for it. I know we love our royalty-free version of My Sharona, but I think we could go for the John Williams. Anyway, Aridondo, I see your message. That's funny. Okay, James Thompson says, I'm sure looking forward to Agent Orange getting his comeuppance. Yeah, I know you're one of your recent videos was that the walls were closing in on Trump, right? You were talking about some of the legal threats to him. So what do you think is going to happen in the next? Do you think is he ever seeing the inside of a cell?
I don't think he's ever going to see the inside of the cell because I think they don't have it in Georgia. I don't think they can make their case. I'm not so sure there's the courage in the New York Attorney General. I do think the one possibility is that there are criminal referrals that come from the January 6th committee related to Donald Trump's role in fomenting the insurrection, the conspiracy, all that sort of thing, and they make the criminal referrals to the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice then opens up a grand jury, and perhaps there's some sort of negotiated end with Donald Trump to some capacity, like, okay, he says, I'm not running for president again. I don't know if he's gonna run for president anyway, but I don't think he'll ever see the inside of a cell. I think the best we can hope for is public humiliation and shame, which would be fine for me, but it would be nice if the Department of Justice at least started an investigation.
Yes, I agree. I think we largely agree there. Okay, let's see. Squirrel gave out 20 community sub gifts on Twitch. Jeez, okay, thank you, Squirrel. Drew in Georgia gifted one as well. Red Light Dragon resubscribed for the 18th month, says thanks for the update on how democracy slowly dies. Can't wait for it to reach Europe. Ooh, and happy birthday, John. Thank you. Hopefully not. But anyway, we got more news for you, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Okay, let's dive into a little update of a couple characters we haven't talked about for some time.
Cuomo!
Yeah, wait, is that Kinzinger? Is he involved? There we go, thank you. I don't know, maybe he's involved, who knows? News is Mad Libs, everybody. You just need to get used to it these days. Okay, with that. Over the last year, we saw 2 Cuomos go down for largely, but not wholly unrelated scandals. So of course, Andrew Cuomo faced multiple allegations of sexual harassment, sexual assault, as well as scandals over, sort of minimizing the number of deaths that were coming from places like nursing homes, those sorts of things. And then Chris Cuomo had his problems as well. And all of this we've covered in depth. They have both receded from public view over the past few months. That said, that might not be forever. So we're finding out now that some political operatives who've spoken with this is Andrew Cuomo on this side, or his aides say they think he's considering a run for attorney general this year against Miss Letitia James, who, by the way, he has dispatched allies of his to complain about her, to attack her, because of course she was involved in the investigation into the allegations against him. So I don't know, David, if that's going to happen, that run. But if it did, that is a very interesting circumstance to be going up against the person who is investigating you. We don't see that very often.
Yeah, a certain level of audacity there, but maybe we shouldn't be surprised, John. I mean, I work for a guy named Eliot Spitzer, the former governor of New York, who was client number 9 because of prostitution, and he had his career rehabilitated sort of because of, hey, CNN gave him a show. And then Current TV did as well. But then he decided, I'm gonna run for, I guess it was mayor, and that didn't go so well. So there's something in the water in which people of New York feel like, okay, they get humiliated, they almost perhaps get indicted. And they think, well, if I just lay low for a little while, then I can resurface, restart my media career, restart my political career, and everything's gonna be fine. I don't think it's gonna work for Andrew Cuomo because I don't think he's got the kind of support across the Democratic Party that he thinks he does, but I'm sure he'll try.
You mean you're referring there to like institutional support?
Yeah, institutional. I mean, there are a lot of Democrats that he infuriated over the last several years. A lot of people that claim that he forgot them. There are a lot of people who feel like he stepped on some toes, that he was an abusive boss, that there are people who went to work for him who didn't have a good experience. I think all those stories are sort of still out there and will hang in the air pretty heavily against him. And so while he may think, oh yeah, I can just sort of waltz into a race for the Attorney General's office, I think there might be some financial people, some strategy people, some operatives who are not so keen to that because they've had friends and relatives who have worked for him who didn't have a very good experience.
Interesting. Okay, well, I'm gonna give some of the evidence that might bolster his case a little bit, and then we can see what we think. So let's see. He's spent more than $1 million from his campaign account since leaving office, which wasn't that long ago. He still has $16 million on hand, according to the State Board of Elections, which seems like a good amount of money for a run like that. Nearly $900,000 went to his lawyer, Mrs. Glavin, with additional outlays to his spokesperson's firm and for letters sent to voters, according to board records. So some of that money was spent subsidizing the people who were going out and spreading, like reasons to question his accusers or James herself. And a poll from the Siena College Research Institute back in September found that New York Democrats believe that he should have resigned, 55% to 35%, but Democrats still rated him more favorably than unfavorably in September and October Siena polls, which by the way is not necessarily what we might have expected coming out of a scandal like that, but that also means he is way more accepted by his state's Democrats than like Kirsten Sinema is, and she hasn't resigned, she's still in office. So if the approval numbers are still looking good, like how do you balance the party maybe having a bunch of issues with him and maybe being worried about having him and his issues be attached to them again, versus he's looking out there at the polls and the money he has, and maybe that is enough for him to think that he can make a run at it?
Oh yeah, I have no doubt that he thinks he can make a run, both between his money, between some of the people who are going to tell him, yeah, go for it. And you know what? He may think, even if I do have some of this baggage, even if he does have the self-awareness to realize that he has alienated a lot of people within the Democratic Party, he may think, so what? Sometimes it's not just Andrew Cuomo versus Andrew Cuomo. There's going to be a real opponent, whether it's James or anybody else. And sometimes you luck out because your opponent does not run a very strong campaign, or because the political winds change, or because circumstances. And the fact of the matter is, there still are people in New York who remember how Andrew Cuomo did at the beginning of the pandemic and made them feel safe, even if he made things worse for people in nursing homes. But so he still gets some credit, and he may think, hell, never mind, the Democratic institutions that may be aligned against me, or the people who are saying bad things about me. I still have a base of support out there within the Democratic Party. I'm still popular. I have a lot of money. I don't care whether the institutional part of the Democratic Party is against me. I'm still going to run.
Yeah, maybe. Well, let's turn from one Cuomo to another. Chris Cuomo apparently has some plans for a possible return to financial success, if not a career, but we can talk about those possibilities too. Multiple sources apparently are telling Page Six that Chris Cuomo is ready to dig in his heels by claiming that Zucker, former head of CNN, not only knew about his dealings with Andrew Cuomo, which was one part of the scandal that saw him stepping down, but that the network boss had his own inappropriate dealings with Andrew. He is prepared to demand not the $18 million that are currently left on his contract, or were when he stepped down, but as much as $60 million. The source told Page Six he wants Megyn Kelly money. So I don't know, what do you make of that? Like, he did have a significant portion of his contract still left to go. He apparently wants more money than that. What do you think the odds are of him getting that?
I don't think there are any odds at all of him getting that, unless, from my own sort of dealings with network contracts and all that sort of thing, and when contracts are not extended or they're cut short, it's hard to ask for more money than what is left on your contract, unless you suffered some sort of damages, they fired you improperly. Maybe he's now threatening, hey, I'm gonna file a wrongful termination lawsuit against all of you, which would be the balance of his contract plus damages, but I don't see how that gets to $60 million. I think this is just a negotiating ploy, if anything, and I would frankly be surprised if he even got the balance of the $18 million. Clearly, he violated CNN rules by advising his brother, by not fully disclosing the advice that he was given and how often he was in contact with his brother. And we can all say, sure, I would advise my brother as well. But if you're told you have to tell your employer about it, you have to do that, and he didn't do it. Now, CNN's also in a tough spot because of Jeff Zucker not disclosing his relationship when it began, and also because this largely flows out of the Cuomo investigation that Jeff Zucker got in some trouble. But I kind of separate those two. I think Jeff Zucker's not coming back for sure. I don't think Chris Cuomo's going to get most of the money that he's looking for, but he's going to try.
Yeah. Do you? Just out of curiosity, I mean, we don't have a lot of information to go on in this, or at least I don't know publicly available information. But Chris Cuomo, in terms of like future ventures, do you see him ever, like Megyn Kelly, like she had a few shows that she tried to do or whatever. Do you see Chris Cuomo getting a show again? Do you think he's gonna go like with an independent podcast or something? What do you think?
That's a great question, John. And I never thought that Megyn Kelly would get another show, but she did. She has her own sort of podcast or production company. I think Chris Cuomo, he burned some bridges at ABC News. I don't think he's going back there. I don't think he'll never go back to CNN because there are too many people at CNN who don't like him. I think he burned some bridges there. So a lot of people in the CNN world who are going to other places who will not hire him. But Chris Cuomo's going to get enough money, or has enough money, that if he wanted to start his own production company, if he wanted to start his own online show, if he wanted production deals with Discovery or somebody like that, sure. I mean, I suppose he's a fine enough broadcaster and talent to be able to pull that off. I just don't see him ever having the kind of perch, the kind of profile that he had at CNN.
Yeah. Yeah, and like we've said, we do this literally every time. We like needlessly go out of our way to like talk about any potential bias. Chris Cuomo is one of the only people on mainstream media that has had TYT people on. Like he's I would not classify him as a massive progressive or anything, but he was one of the few who would actually bring on progressive guests from time to time. So we're just putting that out there. I believe we are accurately and fairly reporting on him, regardless of whatever potential bias you think me appearing on there a couple of years ago might provide. Final question, and this is obviously the most substantive one, David. Considering Andrew and Chris as brothers, Chris was once sort of playfully lampooned by John Oliver for his Instagram activity, which would often see him in the gym. Do you think it bothers him that Cuomo-sexual came about as a thing to refer to Andrew?
Well,
that's got a sting.
There was a lot of chatter when all the Andrew Cuomo sexual stuff came out, that it was only a matter of time, right, before Chris Cuomo had his own sort of issues. And there was a former network executive who said that Chris Cuomo was very inappropriate with her, and he apologized, all this sort of thing. But Chris Cuomo has something of a reputation of being a ladies' man, even after he got married. So, did he treat his exes, his mistresses very well? I mean, sometimes, who knows? But I think he was a guy who liked the sort of the cachet of being known as a ladies' man, and sometimes that can come back to haunt you.
Yeah, it is a burden, I will say. Anyway, with that said, that's potentially the futures for them. We will see. Nobody really goes away in American politics. I mean, even Sarah Palin came back eventually. So just bear that in mind. Now, with that said, why don't we jump into slightly different news here? You remember Erik Prince? So under investigation by the Justice Department, formerly of Blackwater, involved in a whole bunch of real world awful stuff, and then a bunch of stuff which I am pretty sure is just a series of log lines for sort of quasi sci-fi, military, private, whatever, adventures abroad. Anyway, he also had some plans domestically to infiltrate different groups, including Democratic campaigns, progressive groups, and some Republicans not seen as sufficiently loyal to Donald Trump. So there's some great New York Times reporting on this that we want to tell you about. Obviously, more details are available at the New York Times if you'd like them. But they reported yesterday that Erik Prince helped former British spy Richard Seddon in his operation that sought to surveil liberal organizations, Democratic operations, and individuals opposed to then President Trump in an effort to gather unfavorable information that could be used against politicians and activists across the country. They say that Prince became the operation's celebrity pitchman and fundraised for the spying effort. They say that the two said the goal of the private spying operation was to gather dirt both on Democrats and rhinos, slang in conservative circles for Republicans in name only. The plan was to begin in Wyoming, they said, and expand operations from there. And so there's some concerns around some campaign donations they made that in theory might violate federal campaign finance laws. but the idea was that they were going to either place or flip undercovers in these different places to develop attachments with individuals and organizations and then provide information back. And this was designed to hurt both sort of standard establishment Democrats, progressives in different activist organizations, and even Republican politicians as well. So it was a pretty broad operation, David.
I'm not surprised by the cloak and dagger nature of what Erik Prince would be involved in. I am a little bit surprised in that I'd heard that he was a fairly smart guy, and this sounds pretty stupid. I mean, what is it that you're afraid of in Wyoming? I mean, you really think that Wyoming is going to trend and become a democratic state like Colorado? No, of course not. So the lengths that he went, and by enlisting Project Veritas and some of the others, sure, that's the world that I suppose he lives in, and nobody should be surprised by he would do all this sort of subterfuge and everything else. But what, again, I just can't figure out, you're that afraid of progressive groups, you're that afraid of Democrats making inroads in a place like Wyoming, you're that afraid of anti-Trump Republicans, and this is your way of dealing with your anxieties and fears? That's just weird. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, the Wyoming thing is the weirdest thing. It's so weird to conceive of, oh my God, it's on the precipice of flipping blue or even purple, that it makes it seem as if it's got to have been a personal thing, right? Maybe not for Erik Prince, but for somebody involved in this, like to want to take down the governor, Mark Gordon. I feel like that had to have been a personal thing. I don't know. Maybe more reporting will come out. And look, of course, there are versions of this that are not necessarily as surprising or as reprehensible. I mean, everybody wants to get information, clearly. That's what a lot of reporting is based on. That's certainly, like, political dirt is not a new thing. There's just something about it being so, like, intentional and organized and well-funded and potentially long-term. It reminds me of, I'm not sure if you were familiar, a few weeks ago, there was that story about, I think it was an operative working with like British intelligence who had like lived a double life in British environmental organizations, even like doing long-term relationships with women who were activists in the movement while he was married, like as a spy. It just, there's something so dirty about it. Like, and I have to imagine that if you're in some of these states or if you're in one of these organizations, if you're reading this, you're probably looking around and wondering, like, am I 100% sure that I can trust all of these people, especially newer people that maybe they're not just here to try to get information and trap us or whatever?
Well, that's a good point, because it sounds like this goes beyond just infiltration. I always figured with Project Veritas and some of the others, it wasn't just about humiliating what they described as the liberal media. They wanted to blackmail them. They wanted to have something on camera where they could go back to the organization and say, okay, pay us a lot of money or whatever it is. And I almost get the sense with Erik Prince that for him, it wasn't also just about infiltrating and gathering information, that maybe his way of operation is to gather terrible things about people and then go back to them and say, okay, now pay me off. That's how we're gonna do business. Otherwise, I'm gonna destroy you. And maybe he would destroy them anyway. There is a sort of a darker element, a shadier element when it goes that far. And it certainly seems to look that way, because on the surface, it doesn't seem like this was just looking for information, just trying to understand why progressives were making the pitches that they were.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. That's that layer that takes it beyond just normal politics. I do think that there's one other layer that we should identify, though, which is like all of that is reprehensible, but in theory, some of it you might think, well, if the stuff is true, it's true. But as you point out, they're involving Project Veritas, which frequently lies and edits things incredibly deceptively, dishonestly. So it's almost one thing if it's just intelligence gathering, but if it's like deceiving people about the intelligence that you've gathered, that's even worse. It's just, there's seemingly no end to the different ways that this is disgusting. It's a nasty, nasty parfait in that way.
And there's a silliness to Project Veritas with like their silly little nicknames they give each other. I guess this British spy in this particular case who worked for them was known as Kimchi. Okay, was he Korean American, whatever? Fine, but it's almost like they enjoy playing this role of being like a 007 type of international agent who goes undercover, and that's just kind of sad.
Yeah, you're not James Bond. You're trying to blackmail a Republican in Wyoming. That's not as cool as you think it is. There are worse lives. It's not great. Anyway, okay, so with that said, we are going to take our second break. But when we come back, you've all demanded it. We want John to talk about NFTs more, but no, we have a good reason. We're gonna give you an update on the Melania Trump NFT story from like a month ago. How did that actually work out in practice? We have that and more. And then for the last half hour of the show, we do have a surprise. So there's lots to look forward to, but we'll see you after this. Okay, everybody, let's see what's going on. Want to make sure that you know, because some of you might only wake up to see TDR. You might want to start waking up an hour earlier, because did you know that the watch list comes on every day immediately before the damage report? That's right, the watch list with J.R. Jackson is live weekdays, 12 p.m. Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time. And it's a TYT show. So of course, yes, they talk news, they talk politics, they talk social commentary, but also sports and just interesting stuff that's out there. They have a lot of fun. They have some great guests. Francesca was on today, so you're not gonna wanna miss that. And then after our show, of course, every day you got Indisputable, which has a special episode today. Indisputable is gonna be hosted by Adrian Lawrence. Ben Carolla is gonna be on as well. So you're not gonna wanna miss Indisputable coming up immediately after our program on Twitch and at youtube.com/indisputable_TYT. So with that, let's see. In the members' comments, E Pluribus Brian, the Duck Duck Dragon, says Trump can't even get an animal comparison right. Yeah, not visually, although I definitely think that David is onto something. Like, it's, you get the spider sense for like weird Republican racism. Like there's something about that. I don't know exactly what it is, but I don't like it. Anyway, Wayne says John and David are a great team, just like John and JR. Excellent exchange of ideas. So says Wasabi Dragon. Thank you. Yes, we always love having David on. One of the awesome additions to TYT of the last few years. Great to have you.
And anytime we can have somebody named Wasabi just after we spoke about kimchi, hey, exactly. I know we're going for lunch.
Yeah, Wasabi Dragon, have you considered being an international man of mystery? That's apparently, get involved with Project Veritas. Maybe it could happen. Anyway, let's see. A Dent Hitchhiking Dragon said on Twitch, I refuse to let McConnell have the nickname Old Crow. That makes him sound like Jeor Mormont from Game of Thrones. That is true. It's too, plus, you may not know this, David, but I'm a bit of a weirdo in my private life. I write stories that have animals as characters. One is a crow. Don't take my crow, man. I love that crow. And Mitch McConnell is gonna make him look bad. Anyway, let's see. Jimmy Joe says, hopefully Cuomo is done. Just like Anthony Weiner, Democrats don't get away with things like Gates, Trump, Roy Moore, etc. get away with. I think that's a reference to Andrew Cuomo, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Weiner had, I forget exactly what run he made a few years back, but he did, I think, attempt to come back, didn't he? With some sort of.
Yeah, I think he attempted to run
Congress?
For, was it assemblyman? Maybe it's
maybe.
Something like
Not
that.
sure.
Borough president, who knows?
Yeah, but it is definitely like it. The Democrats and Republicans are a little bit different about that. More recently, you go back, a couple decades, not necessarily so much, but yeah. Mayor of New York in 2013. Thank you.
There we go.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
There you go. Let's see. Sharon Pius says, Turtle, the animals are adorable. An old decrepit old white demon that resembles a turtle is horrifying. Although that would make for a good story, actually. Let's see. Debbie Grove says, personally hoping all the Repubs running for Senate and PA kill their chances by eating each other up. Woohoo! Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it is both scary that in some of these races you have multiple like weirdos competing to be the most disgusting pro-Trump, but that also means that they attack each other a lot and they split the funding and stuff. So I don't know. Maybe they've gone so radical that they'll actually minimize a little bit of their ability to do some damage. But
and even Ohio, right? Even Trump said that Mandel in Ohio is Trump thinks that he's a weirdo.
I know.
So
he's right there.
Characters, yeah.
He is. Okay, a little bit more news to close out the hour. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Okay. This last block that we have with David is like, it feels like so TDR, these two topics back to back. We're gonna be talking about NFT scams and postal vehicles. So anyway, but I think that there's some important stuff here. So with that said, let's launch into this. Not long ago, Melania Trump launched an NFT. Why not? Every rich person is doing it. It was expected to bring in about $170,000, maybe a little bit more, maybe as much as $250,000. And for that, what do you get? Well, the artwork is called Melania's Vision, and we were told it embodies Melania Trump's cobalt blue eyes, providing the collector with an amulet to inspire. And that amulet comes in the form of, I'm assuming, a JPEG of this. So you can see these eyes. It's not bad. If I sketched that on my lunch break, I'd be relatively proud of myself, I think. That said, it's been a bit. It went on sale, and you know what? There were some bids. The opening bid was the equivalent of $250,000 in Sol tokens. So that is a digital currency on, I believe it's called the Solana platform. Anyway, a portion of the proceeds were said to, they were going to be used to provide foster care children with access to computer science and technology education. In the end, it did go for 1,800 Sol, which is worth about $170,000 at that time. It's now 200,000, and then tomorrow it'll be worth $5, and then $1 million the next day. You never know, it's fun. But here's the thing about it. That might seem like mission accomplished. It sold for about what we thought it would, maybe not quite as much. But here's the thing. According to blockchain records reviewed by Motherboard, the person who bought the NFT collection appears to be Melania Trump, or at least whoever set up the auction for her. The winner of Melania Trump's NFT got the money from none other than the creator of the NFT itself, and an address linked to the NFT creator got the money back. So, it's an NFT, it's a blockchain thing, so I don't even know if you can know more than that about this. But David, that seems weird.
Look, I'm talking. This is the first time I've ever talked about NFTs. I think I've read about them, but so the whole concept to me sounds really strange. I mean, the idea that you get an original JPEG, an original digital copy of some piece of artwork or some film or video, photograph, whatever. Fine. I guess if people want to have the original on their computer or whatever, good for them. But who among us hasn't voted for ourselves in an online poll or something where our own credibility is in the public domain? And so, okay, Melania feels like the bids are not high enough. She wants to make sure that the bid matches what the asking price was. If that makes her feel better about herself and her status in life, whatever. Maybe you can explain the NFT and also the whole blockchain thing to me as well, because I'm still stumped.
Yeah, I could try. Yeah, no, I like the so either she did it herself, knowing, okay, I just want it to be this much and I'll buy it or whatever, or maybe she thought, okay, I'll pump up the bids and then someone will outbid me. Oops, maybe not. I love the idea that everybody's just voting for themselves. Earlier in the show on our Twitch poll, Louis Gohmert's like, no, I'm the dumbest. He's voting for himself. Maybe not. But anyway, so yes, the idea is that it is a system for tracking and verifying the ownership of digital goods. So primarily, the way it's analogized is that you are not buying the image. I mean, you are, but that's freely available. It's literally in my production document right now. You're buying the digital receipt to it. I would go one step further and say, you're not buying that either. What you're buying is a speculative financial instrument purely available in digital form that needlessly has an image attached to it that nobody would want. I mean, after all, can we show the image one more time? Can we put that up? The Melania's Vision or whatever, those eyes. So take a look at this. Do you want it? Would you give me $5 for it? If I had a 16x20 that I printed out, would you hand me a $5 bill for it? Would anyone?
I mean, I wouldn't, but then again, I guess the world that I sort of come from, there were people who were confused when I was a kid and I was really into baseball cards. And I always wanted the original Honus Wagner baseball card that would be worth, $500,000. Well, I got, a copy of it and I could put the copy of it and it looked exactly the same on my wall or in my album. But one of them actually had a lot of value. The other one just had maybe some aesthetic value. So I guess I sort of get it. But again, there's something a little bit more wholesome and understandable about kids and trading cards. We're talking now about grownups and blockchain and grownups wanting to own the speculative rights to digital property. Why? Just so they can say they have it? I don't get it.
Well, so that they can make money, and some will. I mean, and there's so many different layers to the scam. So there's There's pump and dump. There's washing, where they do lots of trades back and forth because some of the platforms artificially, like in the algorithm, generate hype for certain properties based on how many times have been traded back and forth. So they just game that system by trading it back and forth between two people. It's just a lot of issues like that. And I do like your baseball card analogy though, because I think for some people, it's actually very similar to baseball cards. I mean, with the difference being that with baseball card, you at least have a baseball card. Right. It is a desperation. When I was a kid and I would buy some Spawn comics, I hoped it would rapidly rise in value. Why? Because I had no other means to getting money. I was desperate, so that's what I did. And I just hoped it would go up for no reason that I could really define. I feel like there's actually quite a bit of that in NFTs.
Right, but you were a kid and you're an aficionado of comics, right? These are grown-ups who are not exactly, I don't know, experts on Melania's eyes or eyes in general. I mean, when you describe it, it makes me think about Elizabeth Warren and her plan to try to, and Bernie Sanders wanting to put a tax on all Wall Street transactions, because you are essentially people trading pieces of paper. The paper itself is just a piece of paper, but you attach some meaning to it, and who can trade the pieces of paper the most, the fastest or the best, they make the most money. Well, that doesn't do anything for our economy. That doesn't help the greater good. So maybe while we're talking about putting taxes on Wall Street, which we should, let's put some taxes on NFTs, and people who want to trade pieces of paper or digital images, fine, do it to your heart's content. But you're not a child. These are not baseball cards or comics. You're a grown up, so pay up.
Yeah, I'd rather have the comics, honestly, despite being a grown up. By the way, you just raised an interesting possibility. We've got this thing of Melania's eyes that obviously nobody watching this would want. What if we did one of Bernie's vision, just a close up of Bernie's like red old eyes? I would pay $100,000.
Or the photograph of Bernie, like the iconic photograph with with him like at the inauguration, looking like this. I could see that could be a great fundraiser, and he already made it something a fundraiser, right? With the gloves. Sure, whoever would want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars having the original digital copy of that photograph by whoever was taken, sure, maybe that would raise a lot of money, and maybe that's money that could go to help charity or whatever it is.
Totally.
But it's still a little bit weird.
Yeah, and by the way, as we say every time, and I hope that this will become baked into the conversation, I am not saying that with NFTs or blockchain, there is not any legitimate use for the underlying technology. I am saying that it is being used largely in a scammy fashion. It is being used for stuff that has nothing to do with, like if there's actual artists who are using NFTs like to sell their real art, that's a great use of it, but not Melania's vision. Anyway, with that said, our producer really wants to hear about these postal trucks, so I'm gonna move on to that now. Let's do it. Just last week, we talked about the controversial plan to kind of upgrade the Postal Service's trucks. We've shown you what they look like. Here's a photo of the new trucks. It's they went in a direction, I will say that. Okay, that's not actually it, but you can see here the duck-billed postal truck that they're going to be putting out. Anyway, the appearance is not the important part. The important part is that they're going to be buying about 165,000 new trucks. Only about 10% of them will be electric. Some might be able to be converted to electric. No plan has been presented for when or how or at what cost they will do that. And with the AC running, it gets only like 0.4 mile per gallon more than the one that they used to use. And that's still less than 9 miles per gallon. But that's all baked in, that's all terrible. Here's a new detail of how intentionally terrible this is. According to its environmental review of the procurement of these new trucks, the new gas delivery trucks have a new curb weight of 5,560 pounds and a payload of 2,941 pounds for a combined vehicle weight of 8,501 pounds. That is almost double the weight of the current USPS delivery vehicle, the LLV. So what does that matter? Why would we care? I mean, sure, it's heavier, but what's the difference? It's not just heavier. It is exactly as heavy as it needs to be to screw everyone over, including the environment. So, generally speaking, cars have more stringent regulations than trucks, and so-called light-duty trucks, which are often what most people call SUVs, pickup trucks, minivans, have more stringent regulations than heavy-duty trucks. In other words, as you move up through these different classes of vehicles, you can pollute more and more. If the trucks, the new ones that are being built, were 0.01% lighter, they would have to probably, under the USPS's rules, be electrical to meet the proposed requirements. But they're not. They're a higher class, so they can pollute way more. So they are intentionally heavier so that they can then be worse for the environment. This is the loophole, David, that just frustrates me and so many people about the way the government works.
This is one of the most depressing things that I've heard, and I had to spend like hours going through Lauren Boebert tape earlier today. I mean,
that's true.
These trucks are ugly, right? I've seen them, in the toy store with my kids. He wants to get a postal truck, and I'm like, okay, it's sort of this new postal truck. I never knew that, only 10% were going to be electric. What's the point in having a design this bad if it's not electric? That's ridiculous. And oh, by the way, this was the whole reason that they got new postal trucks, was to be electric and to help environment and be part of the solution, not the problem. This is ridiculous.
Exactly. I say take Louis DeJoy, force him into early retirement, give him one of these painted gold as a going away present. He can drive that around to his heart's content. The rest of us need something more environmentally conscious. That should not be too much to ask.
Yeah, make him drive a rickshaw if he around his retirement community and have it.
Fine, it's good exercise.
Yeah, something that forces him to think about it while he's huffing and puffing. This is an embarrassment. It's a shame. It's a colossal waste of money, and it goes to show just how corrupt the process is for government contracts at every level. It's the people who are most connected to their friends, the suppliers, the contractors. They're the ones who get the contracts, not the companies necessarily that are the best for the environment or the best for the greater good.
Other consumers, yeah. Well, unfortunately, David, that's all the time we have for you on the program. Thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, check out Rebel HQ. Lots of great work there by David. We got more coming up. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Thanks, John.
Sorry, David. Okay, everybody. Unfortunately, David did have to go, but we do have some more great news for you. Oh, we also have, I have to sort of correct, I forgot to do something earlier. I forgot to tell you what day it is. Oh, JM, it's Big News Wednesday. Oh, JR's here. JR, how's it going?
What's up, you guys? Chilling with it now. It's been a while. I'm just sitting in another room, and whenever we do an outfit change, we just turn hats back to the bedroom. So. For all you guys to watch the watch list.
Yeah, it has been a little bit since you've been on. Do you remember how to do this? Like to talk about the news? Like, what do you think?
I mean, I don't know. I was trying to think of. I was gonna jump into the next story, but I was like, wait a second. Let me wait for him.
Yeah.
Let him do this.
Hey, I'm in charge. Okay, you look at. I'm in charge. Okay. Anyway, no, we're very excited to have JR.
Look straight up from your producer looking at me now. I know we can say her name. Sophie looking at me now, and everyone else. It's maybe we can try this. Maybe.
I mean, we did it for this last half hour because we only had David for an hour. But if that laptop had already been set up, I mean, I feel like this is doable. I feel like this can be done. Anyway, with that said, we do have a couple of awesome stories to talk about. I do want to read a few of your comments before we do that, though. Pitchfork's Dragon has been a tier 1 member for 8 months on YouTube. Says Melania Trump is trying to raise money to find a moose and squirrel. Also, more Simon Simonson commercials, please. We do need that. That is definitely true.
My favorite of all
time. By the way, I just realized during the break, someone told me to stop saying "with that said," and I just did it again. Sorry.
You haven't heard about the Johnisms? There's multiple.
I know, I hate it. There's nothing I can do about it. But with all that said, we're gonna keep going. The guy called Keith, subscribed for the 14th month on Twitch, says happy anniversary. Thank you. Be well with McKinney, 10 months. Thank you. Patricia Swan, 11 months, says hey Dragon Fam. Hello to you as well. Okay. Oh, and Kidney Dragon, member 4 months on YouTube, says happy late birthday, John. Turned 30 Sunday, so hope you had great birthday weekend too. Thank you. Well, happy birthday to you. I look forward to my 30th as well. I hope yours treated you very well. Now, I was gonna say it again. We will continue by jumping into this.
They said we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. But here in Louisiana and all over the South, Jim Crow never really left, and the remnants of the Confederacy remain. In 1873, when a black man named PBS Pinchback won a US Senate race, he was never seated. They claimed election fraud. The attacks against black people, our right to vote, and participate in this democracy are methodical. Gerrymandered districts are a byproduct of the Confederacy. Our system isn't broken, it's designed to do exactly what it's doing, which is producing measurable inequity. 1 in 13 black Americans are deprived of the right to vote. 1 in 9 black Americans do not have health insurance. 1 in 3 black children live in poverty. It's time to burn what remains of the Confederacy down. I do believe the South will rise again, but this time, it'll be on our terms. I'm Gary Chambers and I'm running for the US Senate, and I approve this message.
Man, he is not playing Gary Chambers there. Running for Senate in Louisiana, of course, we've had Gary on many times. He's co-host of the show. He got a lot of attention for his first ad, where he, in the words of Rolling Stone, smoked a massive blunt, I think is the way they said that. Well, here, maybe even more incendiary, more fiery, burning the Confederate flag, JR. There's gonna be some mad conservatives.
Well, let's see, okay? So we'll see what the response is. We've probably already seen it now. But we'll see if there's anger based around the burning of that flag. And see if people are just as upset as they will be about the American flag, and then see where you stand when it comes to which country, which version of this country that you are proud of, or what you'd like for it to come back to. Because this is something that I don't think I've seen anyone do. And while he's doing it, he's telling you with facts and logic as to why he's doing it. And if you disagree with those things, you then have to admit just how un-American you are. Because do you support this flag or do you support that flag? If he burns the Chinese flag, if he burns the Iraqi flag, if he burns any other flag, and you don't have that same gut-wrenching, oh my God, he's burning, that's not the American flag. So if you have a problem with that, you might find out you have a problem with this country.
Exactly, yeah, and let's bear in mind, Confederacy doesn't exist. It tried to divide the nation. It failed. It's not like a thing. Like, it's not like burning the American flag, which I personally think you're perfectly free to if you want to. It's just fabric. Honestly, it could have been made into a bunch of bathing suits. Instead, it was made into a flag. It's the same thing. Some people even do make American flags into bathing suits. So anyway, yeah, look, it is a bold strategy, a very bold strategy. And what I like about it is, and you alluded to this, the facts. So like, what he's not doing is just coming out as so many would, whether they're doing something, that's supposed to be like go viral or whatever, and just being like, there's a war, and for too long they've silenced you, and they said sit down, and they took their policy and they shoved it down your throat, but we'll stand up and we'll talk. Stop being so vague, Jesus. There are actual facts out there in the universe, and you can pluck some up and present them to buttress your point. It doesn't have to be like just focus group drivel, basically, which is what so many ads are, and these are not.
There's a continuous rolling from Gary about things that make Americans uncomfortable, smoking a fat blunt, as Rolling Stone said, burning the Confederate flag. And he's making you feel what you probably would be ashamed of feeling if you understood why you felt that way. He's teaching you, man. And that's the other part of the discomfort. Who wants to be taught by this Southern black person who I didn't care about before he made an amazing speech in front of a board of folks that were doing the same thing? It's almost too easy, because no one ever taps into this approach to how to approach your election and how to approach talking to American people, because he's inspiring people whether or not they really want to believe it or not. You can't. So many people, some can, but regular folks, if they have nothing on the line as far as monetarily or career-wise when it comes to politics, your heart and your soul have to acknowledge reality. And if he keeps giving it to you, you trying to reject it is gonna turn into just rejection of yourself. I hope. We'll see.
Yeah. I only have two more things. One suggestion and then one question. My suggestion is, and Gary, my service is available if you want to hire me to be a consultant or whatever. That ad was almost perfect. He's got the flag, and you're wondering why the hell would he have that flag? And then you see the shot where it's the flag, and you just see a little bit of the gas, and you're like, oh no, what's he gonna do? And then he pours it and he lights it, and then they do that close up of just his face. And literally every conservative in his state pooped their pants at the same time. And then it's burning, and it's almost perfect. Only thing that would make it better is, and I said this in a production meeting, if he then used the burning Confederate flag to light one of the aforementioned massive blunts and smoke it. That would have been a little bit better. I think we can all agree, but it was almost perfect.
Hey, I'll hire you, John.
Thank you. So my question is, he did the weed ad, and now this. What's next?
What's next?
I'm actually a little bit worried.
It really is what was in my head. I was like, man, what else? What else? Because no, it's not just he's speaking to Confederate loving Southerners. He's speaking to people who would have disagreements with the Confederate flag, who are okay with folks smoking weed. They would then go, man, why did I feel some kind of way about that when I thought I was okay with everything? We all have it deeply ingrained in our systems because we're indoctrinated from birth with this type of stuff.
Yeah, you're right. Well, anyway, great work, Gary. Can't wait to see what you got coming up after this. Okay, with that said, let's jump into the exact opposite. That was a video to get you hyped, get you fired up. We've got, oh God, the opposite of it. So everyone prepare yourself. Let's jump into this.
Joe Biden's latest idea is to pay black people to smoke more crack.
Okay. So Tucker Carlson is going to give you the worst version of what every single right winger over the last 24 hours has provided, taking this new program that the Biden administration is putting forward to save people's lives. And he is going to use it to launch into one of the most disgusting monologues I can remember, even from him. Take a look at this.
Going forward, the administration will send at least $30 million in tax money to nonprofits and local governments so they can purchase, quote, safe smoking kits and supplies. According to HHS, these kits will contain Joe Biden-approved pipes that will allow beneficiaries of the equity agenda to smoke crack cocaine as well as crystal meth. Some say it's about time. Soros-aligned NGOs have long complained that marginalized groups in this country don't have adequate access to illegal narcotics or the tools to use them. With this new program, Joe Biden will finally close the crack gap. For too long in America, quality crack pipes have been the domain of rich white men like so much else. Here's the president's son, for example, smoking crack in bed at the Four Seasons. You'll notice the beautifully designed custom crack pipe, its cooling bowl nestled in the high thread count Egyptian cotton sheets. When Hunter Biden smokes crack, he does it in style. But not everyone in this country is so fortunate. Joe Biden understands how essential narcotics are to the future of his party. If Democratic voters stop smoking crack, they might start thinking for themselves and become Candace Owens or something. Can't have that. So it's new crack pipes for everyone.
It goes on and on and on, disgusting in multiple different areas. I mean, the fact that he, at the end, JR, alludes to the only thing that is stopping black people from becoming Candace Owens is that they smoke too much crack is just, that by itself is, that was on TV, what we just showed you. That whole thing where he's talking about the president's son and pretending that this thing to stop overdoses is designed to stop the crack gap. That is one of the most disgustingly racist things I've seen in literally my entire life, JR.
Yeah, this is, as Fox News pointed out, this goes along with Tucker Carlson and his show that you should not take seriously, that he's not really saying, that he doesn't really, he does believe it, but that his producers wrote for him, that he reads off a teleprompter every day. So that if you think of it that way, which Fox News said it is, that means this is a plan. It means this isn't a thought process. This isn't a true argument. This is his opportunity to push a narrative because it's fake. Again, like Fox News said, it's fake. So when he talks about crack pipes for black folks, that's entertainment for racists. When he talks about, let's just go, maybe tomorrow's gonna be welfare queens and how they're suctioning all this money off of SNAP programs. Oh, and then tomorrow, the day after that, it's gonna be entitlements. Oh, then it's gonna be how we're admitting too many black folks into colleges because he's discovered that black women are going to college at higher rates than most anyone else. All those things because we have to make sure we push back against this big bad progress of minorities actually being recognized and maybe being taken care of in a way. Now, if you think taking care of folks isn't giving them crack pipes or giving them places to safely use drugs, what about those programs that would help people not be on drugs? What about programs that help people get jobs that they can survive off of? What about programs when someone does get out of jail, maybe for a drug charge, that they can get back into society? If you care about how many people are on crack, black people on crack, because that's not a trigger word, maybe we should do something about it. Do you care about American citizens? Because these folks that you're denigrating are American citizens. Or do you just wanna talk about it and then rile up enough racists to then be on your side and go, this is a great program. He's reinforcing my rabid racism. That's all I needed today. Let me go outside and start yelling at a few people about how they shouldn't be in my neighborhood.
I mean, you identified it, that is what he is doing. And there is no limit to how insanely purposefully in a racist fashion you can lie about what the policy is intended to do. In fact, there's an incentive to go as overboard as possible because your audience will believe literally anything that you say. And they want to believe the craziest thing ever, especially if you make the topic about black Americans. They want to believe the worst possible things that you can say, and so he does it. And so you might be watching that thinking, well, okay, I mean, look, I'm a lefty, but it does seem weird to spend $30 million to just distribute crack pipes so people can smoke crack. Yeah, because that's not what they're doing. That's insane. Some of the money will go to safe smoking kits that have been approved and like studies have shown that they are going to stop people from dying. It is part of a process that transitions people out of addiction. It is not designed to increase the amount of crack that they smoke. Literally, nobody is stupid enough to not get that. He is cosplaying being. He is cosplaying being enough of a dumb donkey that he would actually think that. He does not. He just hopes that you're stupid enough that you'll believe that. And imagine, like he would have you think about what it does to a person's mind to smoke crack constantly. Think about it, what it does to a person's mind to listen to an hour of that every night. That, like you say the craziest things imaginable in a really bored, slack-faced way. that will rot a brain every bit as fast as crack. Here is what the program actually does. The initiative also intends to fund facilities offering safe syringe exchanges, opioid reversal drugs, fentanyl test kits, and other methods meant to stem the United States striking drug overdose crisis, which killed more than 100,000 Americans basically in a 1-year period from 2020 to 2021. That he took like the smallest part of it, which again has a very legitimate demonstrated use, pretends the entire thing is about that, and then will go on to say, why isn't he doing anything to help people who are overdosing from opioids when he is literally doing that? These harm reduction practices, of which we've listed several, meant to lower preventable illness, overdose, and death associated with unsupervised drug use, is already used in places like Canada, Australia, and Europe. The AMA has endorsed harm reduction measures like safe syringe exchanges and drug testing kits as well. But this is, I talk constantly about how much more difficult our task is than theirs. Because in this case, they're actually trying to solve a real problem. They have to do that. They have to convince people of all this. They have to get the funding. They have to get the majority necessarily. They have to put it out there, make sure it gets to people. Think about all the tasks that are required for you to solve that problem. What do they have to do? Lie about one aspect of it to trigger the latent racist views of their audience to hate the entire thing. And they're not just gonna hate the safe smoking kits. They're gonna hate the government trying to do anything. That's what it's designed to do, because Tucker Carlson is not worried about you overdosing. He is worried about the government spending any of his money to make your life better.
That is the hook. We can't spread our money, because look, it always goes to, you want me to spend my money on them? Yes, I'm on the Nextdoor app. I've been on those neighborhood apps, and that's what they say when they see a homeless person or they see someone wandering around. Maybe they saw them peeing on the corner or they saw them doing drugs under a sheet. It's how dare whatever elected official in that area allows this to happen. Now, I mentioned this before. I went to University of Southern California, very rich institution in the middle of Los Angeles, full of a bunch of rich kids. I've seen drug use. You know the first time I saw drug use was? It wasn't when I was living in Detroit, downtown Detroit. It wasn't there when I was a teenager. It was when I moved out to California and I went to this higher level of institution of learning, and I had classmates, I had friends, I had acquaintances. I've seen drug use. That's the first time I saw it. And you know what happened to all of them? They graduated. Some of them dropped out. And those who dropped out based off their use, they got help. And that help costs money. And then it causes caring. I mean, it asks for help caring for them. It also sees them as humans. So if we're gonna differentiate between who's on drugs, who's the crackhead, and who's the troubled youth, that's something I guess Tucker Carlson and people like him are the ones that can determine this type of thing. But if it's the wrong skin color or the wrong socioeconomic path that they've been on, oh, they're just garbage people and we gotta throw them away. And I can't believe we're spending my money on them.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, how much cocaine has gone into that waxy slack face of Tucker Carlson's? How many people has he been around that have a similar skin tone as him that he's seen do drugs? Doesn't have a problem with that. Is he calling up Don Jr. to talk him through his obvious problems? Kind of doubt it. No, instead, he brings up Biden's son and he's like, look at this. Don't pay attention to any of the stuff Biden is trying to do to help these people. He's got a son who's a crackhead. Here's an idea, and I'm gonna send this out to the right-wing Christians watching Tucker Carlson. Maybe the experience of having a son addicted to drugs makes Biden worry more about the addicted. Maybe that is why he wants to help them. No, because he has a kid who's done drugs. He should forget about the whole thing. He should just leave them to die in the streets. That's what the Christian Tucker Carlson would have you believe, would have you do. Jesus, it is he makes tens of millions of dollars every year for saying that stuff. There have been over the past couple decades parodies of insane, like proto-fascist right-wing media. None of it can match what Tucker Carlson does every single night on his program. Give me your V for Vendettas, give me whatever parody you want. This is worse than any of that. Now, I'm gonna read just one comment because I need a palate cleanser. Sorry. John Langer, member for 14 months on YouTube, says, happy birthday to me. I'm so old, my cake looks like a Chambers political ad. That is funny. That is pretty good. Happy birthday. Alex O'Neill says, well, the prodigal dragon returns. I think that's huge. JR, glad to have you back. Okay, let's see. Ecstasy Evie says, I'd be happy if the orange man lost everything. Jail, probably unrealistic, but him getting kicked back down would be great. Public humiliation is all we could probably hope for. And he doesn't seem to publicly have a problem with it, but privately have a problem. It still burns. I have an idea that it still burns him. Anyway, with that said, let's jump into a different sort of awful with this.
It's true that people are just walking in and walking out with it.
No, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you go to a local pharmacy, Dwayne Reed or Rite Aid, any of them, and you've got to get someone to help assist you. I mean, they have the little button there.
Yep.
You hit the buzzer, and the guy comes over and unlocks your toothpaste.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about basic stuff.
He's not
And I'm like,
as well.
what did I miss that we now have to lock up toothpaste?
So that is Al Sharpton on an MSNBC panel. I came across this from a tweet of his. I'll show you the tweet. An alleged shoplifter has been caught on tape appearing to steal 10 steaks from New York City Trader Joe's. I joined MSNBC to speak on the need for public safety and to address criminal justice concerns. It's 10 steaks. JR, I said in our meeting this morning, the only thing that could make this more on the nose is if it was 10 loaves of bread the guy was stealing. Should you steal 10 steaks? No, not from Trader Joe's, not from anywhere. That said, do you need to, how many collective millions of dollars do you think the panel had that discussed the Trader Joe's theft, JR?
I think the Trader Joe's theft, I mean, it couldn't have been more than 120 bucks worth of steaks.
No.
But it's not about how much it's worth, because we just have to point out how these commoners keep doing all these petty crimes, and we have to find some way collectively as a country to make this stop. What we're not worried about collectively as a country to make other crimes happening are large financial crimes, maybe skirting your taxes, billionaires not paying into the system and laughing about it literally on Twitter. Those things don't need to be investigated because those millions upon millions of dollars aren't that important. Let's fight over $120 worth of steaks, because it's Trader Joe's. It's not like these are Kobe beef. I don't eat steaks, so I don't know what's the best kind. With the bone in, whatever. Every time I look at steaks, I'm like, man, that's $10? Are you kidding me? Anyways, we're not worried about the real financial crimes that are happening that are actually destroying the fabric of the country, but about things like this. Sure, Trader Joe should have a problem with someone stealing 120 bucks worth of steaks. I think they'll deal with it. Let the local folks deal with it. But we're talking about this on MSNBC. Like, this is a nationwide issue that's taking money out of any of these people's pockets.
Yeah, and if you wanted to do a segment on this after doing something about these larger scale crimes that are exponentially more money, okay, maybe it still seems weird, but that's not what they're doing. They're focusing on this. Now, he at one point, we can't show the full video. He says, I sometimes worry if we're focusing too much on petty crime, but he does participate in it and he doesn't bring up the stuff I'm about to bring up. So for instance, maybe 120 bucks for the steaks, maybe 150 bucks for the steaks.
Okay.
Well, notice this. California's Labor Commission a couple years ago cited an inventory company that works for Trader Joe's in California for $1.6 million for wage theft violations. That's just for some Trader Joe's in California. That ain't the total of wage theft. It's been estimated to cost the country $15 billion every year, more than car thefts, burglaries, and other larcenies all combined. How often do you hear that on MSNBC? There's civil asset forfeiture. There's so much more. They have the people, they can talk about it. We don't have the time to talk about it anymore, unfortunately, because we're out. But Jared Jackson, I want to thank you for returning here. You're always welcome, and soon we will demand that you return to the full Wednesday show.
Hey, yo, this was way too short. I feel like I need an hour and a half.
I think you do. I think the people, if we saw some emojis out there, maybe we'd know what they think too.
You guys, don't change that graphic yet. Don't change it yet.
Exactly. Okay, everybody. Indisputable is coming up. Adrienne Lawrence is going to be leading, so you're definitely going to want to check that out. Show her your support. I will be joining Anna Kasparian for the second hour of the Young Turks later on and trying Bart's most recent culinary invention or crime against stomachs. That'll be coming up later on today, so don't miss that. But until then, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and we'll see you soon.